Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are looking at this interview. And today we have two guests, first time ever, so it's a premiere. And if you don't know me yet, I am Zuzana Mukumai, and I am a relationship coach, and I support women in intercultural relationship to have stronger and more fulfilling relationships. And also, what I want to show the world is that there are many intercultural relationships which can work wonderfully because often we hear only the negative worst case scenario. So this is why I have the series of this interview with women who have actually the partners from abroad. And today I am here with Mareike and Kim, who are two sisters, and they both have partner from abroad. So hello, Mareike and Kim. I'm so excited to have you here, and you are most welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. We're also very excited.
Yes, we're curious to hear what you want to know. What are the things that you've experienced, and what we can share.
Yeah, we are going to talk, of course, we want to hear about your stories, but today we are going to talk about, especially since you are two sisters and both of you have a partner from different country, we are going to be talking mostly about the parents' reaction, because I know it's quite hot topic for lots of women who bring husband from a different country. So before we jump in, can you tell us something a bit more about yourself? What do you do? Where do you come from? Who are your partners?
Sure.
Yeah.
Should I start? Okay. Okay. So we are German. We were both born in Munich, and that's also where we currently live. We have lived in various places throughout our lives, but right now, for a few years, we've now been back to our hometown, which is really nice. Kim has been married to an Italian for about 10 years now, 11, 10?
Well, we've been together for 11 years, but married for 7 years.
So. Okay, 7 years. And I'm married to a Spanish Venezuelan. And we're coming up on our 5th wedding anniversary. Yes, and so maybe a little bit about how we met, because that's also a funny story. We have so many parallels in our lives. We're also very close as sisters. And so Kim studied in Singapore and France. There was an MBA program where we studied with many people from many countries. And yeah, that's where you fell in love. Yes. And then, funny enough, 2 or 3 years later, I did the same MBA, also in Singapore, also in France, because I saw it when Kim was there, and I really wanted to have this experience, this international experience. And that's also where I fell in love. So I guess we just met two very special people there, and then and have been with them ever since.
Yes.
It's amazing, like as you said, like so many parallels. You studied in the same places, you both met partners from abroad, and so many years of experience. So I'm really curious about what you have to share today. And maybe because I already announced a bit that we are going to talk about the parents. So how did your parents approach both of you having a partner from abroad? Were they excited, or were there any challenges? How did it go?
I think they were excited from the beginning, because we've had actually both had smaller, shorter relationships with people from abroad or from other cultures before, when we were younger. And I think especially for our mom, it was kind of a cool thing, because she herself had experience in living abroad for some time, and also having relationships. So we never felt that there was an issue with that. I think they were excited from the beginning to learn about the other cultures, to learn about the differences, and welcome both of them as part of the family, and as part of a family that now is way more international, speaks way more languages than what we probably would have thought 30, 40 years ago when we were born in Munich, or outside of Munich, in a small town. So we both experienced, both our parents, to be very open-minded about it. But I think also the way they raised us. I mean, they sent us abroad. They gave us the possibility to study abroad already in high school. We both spent a year in the US during high school, and then they encouraged us whenever we thought it would be a great idea to go abroad with work, with studies, and so on. So they've traveled with us. So I think the fundamental basics were there, that they raised us as open-minded international women, and therefore they couldn't really say, hey, it doesn't work. So no, jokes aside, I think they, from the onset, they were very excited, and they saw both of our men as the individuals that they are, and the men we fell in love with. So yeah, a lot of support from their side.
Yeah. It's quite amazing how we all come from a kind of different families, also within the same country and within different countries, like that some families are already like more open-minded traveling. Meanwhile, other families, they don't travel beyond 50 kilometers from their hometown. So that's super interesting. And what I wanted to ask you is this like a common experience like in Germany? I don't know if you have like if you know how maybe other German women who found a partner from abroad, do they have this same amazing experience that their parents were sending them to study abroad, to travel with them, and they were basically excited that they brought more cultures at home? Or there are some maybe families which are not looking at it in such a favorable way?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to generalize here, because I'm sure you have everything on the spectrum. But I would argue that a lot of Germans generally love to travel. So already there is an open-mindedness for other cultures. There's an interest to learn. And I think people who experience that would generally be more welcoming and more open to partners from other countries. That being said, there's of course always there are prejudices. You know, we all we're all human, so we kind of retrieve to stereotypes, or we sort of interpret the world in our learned patterns. So I think misunderstandings are inevitable. But I think the most important thing is, if your daughter, if your son, if your child comes to you and introduces someone to you from another culture, is to think, who is that person? You know, like, apart from all the images that suddenly pop into my mind when I think of that culture or that country, who is that person? Who is that individual? And how can I make sure that I welcome them in our lives as part of my child's life?
I think on that, one thing that really stuck to me was a question that very early on my dad asked me. He's like, we were talking about the relationship with my husband, and so back then boyfriend, and my dad was, I just want, what I care about and what I just want to know is, are you happy? That's the most important thing. And I was like, yes, I am. I can truly, honestly say I've never been that happy. And I think that was for my dad, it just kind of blended out anything else, any fear that potentially would have been there, not knowing what it would be to, you know, in the long run, live with someone from another country, everything that comes along with that. It's if you have that fundamental trust and happiness and love, then all the other things will work out if you're willing to do that. And I think that is a big part where the mindset is key from the onset.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Kim, because I think often it comes down to this, like when we talk of a relationship between our partner and parents, and even if they are not very happy in the beginning, then they eventually end up asking this question, but are you happy? And I think we are also, I think all of us are parents here, and we all agree that we want the best for our kids. So eventually, even if our parents might have not been very happy with the choice of our partner, when they see that we are happy, it usually like removes all the other tensions. And then back to Mareike, what you said about like I really like how you said that Germans are generally open to traveling, and that's kind of prerequisite for being like more tolerant and more used. And this is something what I have been thinking about before this interview, because I am from the Czech Republic, so we are neighbors, but then the contexts are quite different. It's just my observation. Maybe it might be not 100% accurate, and you can correct me anytime. But I feel also in Germany, now there is so many more people like living in Germany who are from abroad, like from Africa or from Turkey, and it's just much more multicultural than Czech Republic, maybe with the exception of the Prague and Brno, the two biggest cities. Like I always say that my grandparents, for example, they never have seen an African person in their life, like in person. So this context is very different, and I think that can make it much easier for accepting other people. And I also have a number of friends from Zambia who live in Germany. So hi, Jeff, if you are watching. So it's just I'm happy to hear that generally, like you see, that people are used to different cultures, and I hope this for Czech Republic as well one day. But we are getting there. So I just like that you mentioned it. And there was a second thing I wanted to point out, but I forgot it. So maybe I will get back to it.
We'll get back to it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just to add to that point, what you just said, I think we're getting there. Like when I just think of, I'm with my kids on the playground, I hear so many languages around us, like parents talking French to their kids and Arabic and Russian, and it's just such a mixture. And then, for example, both of our kids go, so you have two and I have two, and they each go to bilingual kindergartens, which is also a great sign that there are more than one Spanish-German kindergarten in Munich and more than one Italian-German kindergarten in Munich. And I think that's a great sign that where we just realize it's just becoming more multicultural, and I think that's beautiful.
That's why I do this interview, because I want people to hear these stories, because we always hear the negatives, like how the interaction doesn't work. And so I'm very happy that like we are sharing this nice positive experience and can show other women that it can actually work. And I'm curious about one thing, and maybe it's not applicable, but since you said your parents were encouraging you to travel and so on, was there any difference in how like your parents or maybe people around also like perceive that one of you have partner from Italy and the other one from Venezuela? Is there some difference between how people approach them based on where they come from?
That's a good question. So maybe one thing, so I'd say like in Germany, everybody knows Italy, right? Everybody loves Italy. Everybody loves Italian food. Most people have been there. With Venezuela, I found that a lot of people sort of had to think first, like, so where's Venezuela on the map? Was that South America? So I just felt that there was a little bit less general knowledge. And I have to admit, when I met my husband, I did not know that much about Venezuela. I always loved Spanish, like the language. I wanted to learn Spanish. I wanted to travel to South America. Venezuela was maybe not like the first country that I thought of, but it's been so exciting to learn. But I don't know, do you think?
So I think what I saw in the beginning, especially, was when he was here, that people very quickly switched to English in order to help him understand and be part of the conversation and to be to interact. I mean, and obviously this kind of stereotypes come out as well, where it's like, oh, you must be a good cook, and oh, you must be drinking coffee, and those things. But I think we managed to usually see them more as conversation starters rather than as putting someone in a certain bucket. But I think, especially with my friends around, they try to see him just as my partner, and as someone that is interesting and that they can learn from. And so I didn't feel it was, I mean, initially it was harder, respectively, for us to meet the friends and so on because of the language barriers. So I think that clearly takes longer than in a relationship with someone who speaks the same language. It was slightly easier for him here because we just speak more English. It's more common to speak English than it was for me in Italy. But my advantage was I actually learned Italian much faster because I just had to. And I made the effort. I mean, initially I was sitting there as like, okay, they're just talking all at the same time. This is really weird. And by now, I mean, I can have the conversations. And so I don't think that people necessarily treated them differently. It was just a bit more difficult to get to know the person as fast as you would do in a relationship where that part is not there.
Yeah, and what you said beautifully, and that also brought me to the thing I forgot before, like that you take the kind of stereotypes about, oh, he must be a great cook, or he drinks 10 cups of coffee a day, as a conversation starter. Like, I actually love how you framed it, because this can be pretty annoying for, I mean, anybody who lives abroad, and you always, whenever you meet somebody new, they ask you the same question. So it can be kind of tiring, but I love the way you put it, to have it as a conversation starter and not be defining the person by these questions. And that's what Mareike actually said before, that your family tried to see them as people, not as their nationalities. And I think this is especially like important, like in the quite crazy time, we have wars, we have like different conflicts, and it's so easy to make stereotypes based on where the person come from, but it's so important to remember they are human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I was laughing the way you said you learned Italian because you had no other way. Like, it was the same for me. I had also ex-husband who was Italian, and in 3 months I could speak Italian. So it's one of the advantages. Yeah.
It does. I mean, I see that for him, it was, I mean, he's learning German by now. He speaks really well, but it was much harder for him because people trying to be nice would just switch to English, so he was part of the conversation, and that was great. But at some point, I actually told my friends, please do not switch to English, because he wants to, and he needs to learn it, and he only learns it if we're patient enough. And so I think that is also one of the learnings from our relationships, is you need patience. You need patience, and you need to grant people the time that they need in order to learn a language. Yeah, that's the basic, because you need to communicate, but also to learn about customs, about traditions, about why there are certain things that you just do differently. And sometimes, even now, after 10, 11 years that we've been together, there are things we still realize. We're like, oh, wait, that is just different because you grew up differently. And we haven't questioned it before, because it was just, we thought that's the way it is, and I think that's something where you never stop learning. I think in any relationship you never stop learning, but especially in the intercultural ones, there's so much more to learn, and there is you just should stay curious throughout your life together, and then it's beautiful, because you grow, and you can also pick up things and make them your own new little thing. So
yeah, 100% agree with this. And I know that we got a bit far from the topic of parents, but I still have another question which I think might be important, so hopefully our viewers will forgive us. You talked of like that even up to now, and I think Mareike mentioned you were together 11 years, right? So it's a long time. Yeah, Kim was with her Italian husband 11 years. Yes. Like, what were maybe what comes to your mind when it comes to the differences? Like, if maybe each of you can mention one or two which really stood out, like between German and Italian, German and Venezuelan.
Yeah, I got
you
one.
You start with your favorite one.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so so what I really, really had to get used to, and still do, I still have not fully figured it out, is the different perception of time. I talk about it all the time, but it's fascinating. I thought that when we meet somewhere at 3 o'clock, then you're there at 3 o'clock. Like there's no wiggle room, it's just so clear, like 3 o'clock, like how, like, isn't that, it's so precise. And then actually this not only happened through my husband, but also when I was studying in Singapore with all these other nationalities, I realized, oh wait, us Germans, we're really weird in that regard. Like it's us, like we're the weird ones. The rest of the world is kind of like more lenient on that. And then when I met my husband, I was just so amazed at how, we would be in a hotel, and then we would have to go to the airport, and the taxi was waiting. Like it was waiting there, and I was ready. I had all my bags and my suitcase, and I was just, like I and my husband actually took the time to jump into the hotel pool and just take another swim. And my head just exploded. Like I could not understand that. And I remember that moment. We were then sitting in the taxi, and I was still like my world, my understanding of the world had been shattered. Like how can somebody do that?
Survive.
And I was quite fascinated by that learning, by that situation. My husband at that moment was a bit frustrated because he was like, wow, you're never gonna understand this. You're never gonna get why I did that and why that's okay and why I choose to do that. And so that's been a really interesting pivotal moment where I was like, okay, God, I just need to open up my brain, my mind so much more to all the options, to all the truths that are out there. Because up till now, I've only known my truth. And that is just one teeny tiny little way of seeing the world. So yeah, that moment just stuck with me. And still today, I have to learn how to just, switch my brain from German to more Venezuelan or more Latin, and to just say, oh yeah, okay, that's also a way to do it. And that's fine. Like it's fine to be 5, 10, 15 minutes late, and even, later. Yeah. I think being late has just become a part of my life. And I chose to be with my husband. I love him. So that is going to be late. So that's going to be part of my life. That's just the deal. And it's all right. Like we just got to communicate more and better. We just got to talk about it. So whenever I realize it's really important for me to arrive somewhere on time, I tell my husband like 10 times, 3 days before the event, I tell him, hey, it would be really important if we could be on time. And then he's going to be on time. But it just requires so much more communication. But I learned that, and now it's kind of working.
And I saw your post on Instagram yesterday about like how you put like your Venezuelan glasses and your German glasses, and it's also like very nice metaphor, like how to see these cultures differently, and
exactly.
Sometimes you just have to go with it.
No, definitely. I think an example that I have is where we're not necessarily aware of small things, small traditions, small ways of known things within a culture. And the example is we had my parents-in-law came to my parents for dinner, and they brought, my mom had prepared everything, and my parents-in-law had brought a small cake as a present. And we had dinner, and my mom brought out the main dish, and then she brought out the dessert. And at some point, my father-in-law was asking, or afterwards, he was asking my husband, he's like, so where's the cake that we brought? Why is it not there? And we finished dinner, and my mom had made the dessert, and we had an absaka and so on, like a small drink afterwards. And a few days later, my husband came to me and was like, by the way, that was really weird that your parents didn't put out the cake that my parents brought, because they had brought it. And it's like, I'm like, why would they do that? If you come to somebody's house and you bring a present, then it's a present. And unless you had agreed that you would bring dessert, then for us Germans, it would be clear that my mom would have not made a dessert, and we would have had the cake as dessert that my parents-in-law brought. In Italy, it is when you bring something like a bottle of wine or a cake or something small, you would always put it right away on the table and eat it. So it was something that my parents acted in the way that it was custom in Germany, and my parents-in-law were acting in a way or expecting something that was customary in Italy. And we talked about it, and we talked about it with all people involved. We laughed about it, and we were like, okay, it was just something, it was a misunderstanding that if we hadn't talked about, possibly my parents-in-law would have been upset, and my parents, maybe next time they would have not brought anything, and so on. So it would have been weird. But it comes back to communication. It comes back to assume that whatever the other person does is in the best intention. They never do something on purpose to upset you or to disrespect you or so. They might just do it because that's the way they do it. And I think we've told the story multiple times, because it was just, to all of us, both from the Italian side as well as from the German side, so obvious that that it's so necessary to always assume the best, you know. I think, and with that also then overcome those things and just laugh together and say, okay, next time you come, you bring it, we'll put it out, or the other way around. And I have quite a few of those moments where I'm like, okay, like my husband, when he makes a list of people, he will always put himself first. He'll say, so who was yesterday at the party? Oh, it was me, it was Mareike, it was Kim, it was whoever. For us in Germany, that's super unpolite. Like you would say, what person is that? He names himself first. Again, it's, you know, assume that it's just something that's different and it's okay. So by now I've learned, but those things are, it just requires so much more open-mindedness and patience again, to not say, did you do that, you know, and judge, and then judge with your own glasses on, with your German glasses on or your Italian glasses on.
Yeah, I think this is like a huge light bulb moment, actually, when you realize that what people are doing, they are doing it in their best intention, that they just didn't wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, how can I screw up the day of other people, right?
Yes.
Nobody do that.
And it's human that you very quickly jump to that, you know, for some reason, it's not necessary, but for some reason, we tend to look at the bad things more than at the positive.
Yeah, and that takes me maybe because I read like in some research that kind of the way we are happy, that we have like genetically some level of happiness. Like some people have higher, some people have lower, and then there is some section which we can work around. So maybe it takes me like that, maybe like there are some nations which are naturally more like a bit negative, and some nations, maybe as you go more south, I don't know, I just made it up, but maybe it could be as you go more south, like people are more optimistic. And because both like Italy, Venezuela, it's kind of southern nations, us, Czech Republic, Germany, we are a bit more like north. And at least in Czech Republic, we always tend to like first think of the negative ones. So we would think like, oh, why that family was so unpolite, this, instead of thinking the other way around.
Yeah, I think that might be a tendency.
Also,
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, I think it comes in part. It comes from a nature where we try to prepare, where we try to have things under control. You know, I mean, the stereotypes, to some extent, they're true. I mean, not for every single person, obviously, but in a tendency they are. And I think that's something that we experience as well, being in those international relationships, where we realize, yeah, there is some truth to it, but it's okay. It's okay that it is, and we just we need to learn to understand why our partner reacts in a certain way, and why maybe I need something different, and then it's okay if I need that. We just need to communicate, and we need to say, okay, if I need to do a bit more planning, maybe that's on me, and maybe sometimes I can also just let go and say, okay, now it's Italian time or Venezuelan time, and we are spontaneous. My husband always laughs when I say, oh, can we spontaneously do something? He's like, isn't that everything in life? And for us, it's like, no, it needs to be.
You need to plan to be spontaneous.
Exactly.
So, and talking of the time, because right now we are at the 30 minutes, so is it fine we do it the Italian, Venezuelan, and African way to speak maybe 5 minutes longer?
Oh yeah, we're super flexible.
Yeah, so maybe going back a bit to parents, even though I know you said your parents were very welcoming and very encouraging, I was curious if there was some defining moments, like when your parents really like accepted your partners, like when they really became the part of the family.
So I remember actually the second time that my parents met my then boyfriend, my dad and he started talking about construction sites because they had joined. So my dad had worked on construction sites. They were both like engineers, and my husband had like led construction sites. So that was just something in common, and I think I just hit it off from the start, to be honest. Yeah, and then my parents just being so curious and so excited about like learning something. And my mom, like she had studied Spanish at some point in her life, so she could like dig it all up. And then I think for you, they were also super, like our parents learned Italian in order to communicate with your parents-in-law. I think they just, I don't know.
And I think, if I would also say the first time they met my husband, it was back in Singapore. Actually, we just got together, and they kind of figured out, okay, that guy is pretty important to our daughter. So I had asked them if it would be okay if we can do a dinner together, and also was asking a lot of my back then boyfriend to say, okay, now, like we've been together just very shortly, and you need to meet the parents and so on. But I think that dinner was kind of the key moment where it was like, okay, he's gonna be. I mean, without it back then, knowing that we would get married, but kind of, he's gonna be part of our life. We went to an Italian restaurant, and and they hit it off. And I think the key thing that our parents did is they always showed interest in the nationality, or in the culture, in the way they grew up. They read books about it. Whenever there's an article, my mom will cut it out and give it to respectively our husbands and say, hey, is that really true? Did you experience it that way? And so on. So I think just their interest into those cultures is a very, very good basis to learn together, to grow as an extended family.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. And why I ask this question, because I know that some of my clients, I think it was mostly those who had partner from Africa, and I think there can be more stereotypes about African men. So it was a bit difficult for the families to accept the partners, and especially like in our own case. What changed everything was when our son was born. That's like when it was like 100% that Chris is part of our family, even if they never met. But that was like the defining moment, and that's why I asked it. And it's beautiful that all of us have different experiences. And Kim, you reminded me of when my now ex-boyfriend took me to his mother. I think it was 3 weeks after we started dating, and I was completely shocked how the Italian mother was so welcoming and hugging me immediately. And she's amazing lady. I miss her like up to now. So that was really, I think that's beautiful also in some nations when they are much more open and welcoming than Czechs are usually described that when I spoke with foreigners like who live in Czech Republic, they said like when they don't know you, they are very cold. Once they know you, they will do everything to make you happy. So maybe it's similar in Germany.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
And then the last question then, what would be your top one advice from each of you to women who are in intercultural relationship, what they should pay attention to?
I'll start. Okay, so, and I think this might actually be true for any relationship really, but I think for intercultural relationship, everything is sort of dialed up to 10. So I would say that you really, really have to be open-minded, You have to learn. And also you just got to be aware that it is going to be work. It's going to be hard. And you're going to have moments where you think, we're never going to get, like, I'm never going to understand that. I will never understand that. And that can be so frustrating because you're like, well, then what's the point of it all? But I think in those moments, it's really, really important to like rewire your thinking, your brain, to go from, this is so hard, this is so frustrating, we're never going to do that, to, wait a minute, this is a possibility for me for personal growth. I can work on myself. But you got to be willing to do that, to just really take a step back, look at the bigger picture and see, like, okay, what's happening here? Why are these dynamics right here? Because I was brought up that way. My partner was brought up that way. It can have so many layers and therefore so many reasons why you don't understand each other. So just to learn to take a step back and to look at that, to decipher that a little bit, I think that can bring you a really, really long way. And then talk about it, communicate, and also be humble enough to say, you know what, sorry, I got that wrong. Or like, oh, right, I didn't see it that way. To just really be humble and very reflective of what's happening in your mind and your heart, and also in your partners.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you mentioned it, I think for me it's communicate. It's talk about everything and talk about the little things that you think are obvious. Talk about them, point them out, because you would be surprised how many things are obvious to you and they're not to your partner, because of the cultural differences, because of the little things you grew up. And also accept that maybe they are not excited about certain things that you're excited about, and try to excite yourself for the other person. And then it will also come back, and explain when there's something that's important for you. Explain if there is an experience that is important. But it comes back to communicate. Have the transparency on your feelings, on your values, on expectations, any of it. And then I think if you manage to keep that conversation going, you will learn every single day, and you will get better every single day, with the work that it takes to make it successful.
Yeah, I think this does for amazing ending. Thank you so much, both of you. And before we go, you didn't mention in the beginning what you actually do. So maybe you want to invite the ladies who are watching to follow you somewhere, or what do you have to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so so as you might have noticed, intercultural relationships are kind of a favorite topic, one of our favorite topics. And we recently started an Instagram account. It's called A Couple of Cultures. And there we share advice and stories and and just tips for intercultural, international, interracial families, couples. It's about raising multilingual kids. It's about, well, basically everything we just talked about with you. And we invite everybody to follow and engage. And it's called A Couple of Cultures.
I will put the link below the video, so you will find it below the video, whoever is watching. So thank you so much. It was my pleasure to have you here, Mareike and Kim. Nice meeting you in person, not only over Instagram. And I think we would have so many things to talk about. So it would be, maybe we should do continuation at one time. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
We'd be happy to do that. Thank you so much. It's been really fun.
Yeah, and whoever is watching, if you have any questions, like, you can post them below the videos, and we will do our best to get back to you. Or you can write, I think, comments or DMs in our Instagram accounts, as mine and the ladies. And one last thing before I finish, I wanted to invite you. There is a workshop I am hosting next week, and it's for women in intercultural relationship who want to stop sabotaging their relationship. So you are most welcome to grab your free seat. It's happening next Thursday, and I will see you there.